You probably don't know UOP. UOP is the largest technology provider to the refining and petrochemical industry. And even though you don't know our name, we impact your daily lives. More than 65% of the world's gasoline, 85% of the world's biodegradable detergents are made with our technology. The one thing that working in the refining sector has taught us over the past 100 years is the massive scales by which fuels are produced today. And therefore, if you're going to have an impact in this fuel's future, what you must do is create drop-in replacements, because our global economy cannot afford to change over its entire fleet or the distribution networks. And so our vision and our goal has been that we would start with biological feedstocks, but make drop-in replacement fuels. When we think about why biofuels, why alternatives, I think the answer is actually quite simple. The reality is that global energy demand is growing at a rate of over 2% a year. What that means is that global demand will double over the next 35 years. Even if that number is 50 years, stop and think about what that means. In our lifetimes, we'll be using twice as much energy as we're using today. How is that possible? How is that going to happen? And for us, that means alternatives have to come in and play an important role. However, we're smarter than we used to be, I think. And so what that means is that every alternative to have a seat at the table must meet sustainability criteria. That means environmental, social, and economic. When we think about biofuels becoming an important part of the future, we think of it as a journey, a 30-year journey, not a 3-year or 5-year transition. And in that light, we think about feedstocks in 2 generations. Feedstocks that are available today, but actually impact potentially the food supply or forest and so on. And second-generation feedstocks, which actually are things which are able to provide large quantities of fuel substitution without impacting the food supply. More importantly, in my mind, are what I like to call the bridging feedstocks. These are camelina and jatropha, like the jatropha that was used to make the fuel that's in your plane today. These feedstocks are like second-generation feedstocks. They are second-generation feedstocks in that they do not compete with the food supply, but they're not available in 10 years' time. They're available now. In 3 to 5 years, they could have significant impact on the pool. And the way I like to think about it, and the reason I think that's important, is because technology is not something that's a Gedanken experiment. You can't stand in the sidelines, wait 10 years, and say, okay, the perfect biofuel future will be lignocellulosic or algae-based, and we're just going to stand around and wait for that to happen. Look at your cell phones. They have a little camera in them, and they're in your pocket. You know, that happened through experience. And so these bridging feedstocks are actually what's going to get us the experience to be able to create that truly sustainable biofuels future. Now, how did we get here? We've been developing technology to create green jet fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, for the past couple of years. I should tell you that when we started this project, everybody said it was impossible. You're never going to get a biofuel that is actually a drop-in replacement. It's not going to meet the freeze point. It's not going to meet the flash point. It's not going to have the BTU content. Maybe you'll fly it from Christchurch to Auckland, but you won't be able to fly it over the pond. Well, that's actually not true, because what I'll show you today is that the fuel that is actually in the plane is actually a drop-in replacement, and Chris will address this later as well. We started this as a project working with the US military 2 years ago, and we're now working with Boeing, Air New Zealand, and Rolls-Royce to try to advance this to a place where it becomes an important part of commercial aviation in the next few years' time. The fuel that's on the plane today has the following properties. What you can see is that if you compare it to Jet A1, which is today's commercial aviation fuel, specifications, the jatropha-based fuel that we've made actually meets flash point, freeze point, heat of combustion, in other words, energy density, and also JEFTOT, which is a measure of stability. So in all dimensions, it's at least equal, if not better, than today's aviation fuels. The question then becomes very simply, is it truly sustainable? I told you we could make a drop-in replacement, but what about its emissions? And so what I'm showing on the plot there is the greenhouse gas footprint of the Jatropha-based green jet fuel that's on the plane today versus petroleum jet fuel. And as you can see, it has a substantially lower carbon footprint. The reason for that is very simple. The carbon that's emitted in use is completely recycled because it's picked up by the plants that are then grown to create the next wave of fuel. When you think about sustainability, again, it cannot be simply environment and society. It also must meet economic dimensions. At the end of the day, we can't afford to pay more for our energy. And so the fuel that was made with a process where the capital investment would be equivalent to conventional refining fuels, where the fuel cost actually would be competitive with petroleum.